You sit in a room full of people, laughter rising and falling like waves, conversations overlapping in easy rhythms, and yet something in you remains perfectly still, untouched. You notice the subtle shift in your friend's smile when someone mentions work, the way another's shoulders tighten at a casual joke. You feel the undercurrents, the unspoken hurt, the quiet pride, the fear disguised as indifference. You understand all of it, almost instinctively. You translate their silence into meaning, their half words into full stories. You hold space for them without being asked, and no one notices that you're doing it. You give them the gift of being truly seen, and in return, you walk away carrying more weight than you arrived with. Their relief becomes your quiet burden. Their clarity becomes your exhaustion. Because while you extend yourself like a bridge over their chaos, no one ever thinks to cross back towards you. This is the core paradox of the emotionally intelligent heart. The deeper your capacity to understand others, the more invisible your own pain becomes. You learned early that feelings were dangerous territory. Maybe the adults around you were unpredictable. Love one moment, withdrawal the next. Or perhaps tears were dismissed, needs minimized, vulnerability treated as weakness. So you became the observer, the one who watched, listened, decoded. You learned to read the room before you entered it, to anticipate moods before they surfaced, to soothe tensions before they erupted. It kept you safe. It made you indispensable. People leaned on you, confided in you, thanked you for your wisdom and your calm. But safety came at a cost. That same sensitivity that once protected you now isolates you. You feel everything so acutely that ordinary conversations can drain you. You absorb emotions like a sponge, and by the end of a social evening, you're wrung out, retreating into silence while others leave energized. You hesitate to share your own struggles because you already know how they'll be received. With a quick reassurance, a change of subject, or worse, an attempt to fix you that misses the depth of what you're carrying. You've seen how most people handle complexity. They simplify it, shrink it, move past it. And your inner world is anything but simple. So you stay quiet. You tell yourself it's kindness. You tell yourself they have enough on their plates. You tell yourself you're strong enough to carry it alone. But beneath those rationalizations lies a quieter truth. You're tired of translating yourself for people who don't speak your language. Tired of offering pieces of your soul only to watch them handled carelessly. Tired of being the one who always understands, yet is rarely truly understood in return. There's a specific kind of loneliness that lives here. It isn't the dramatic emptiness of having no one. It's subtler, more insidious. It's the ache of being surrounded by connection that never quite reaches you. It's the hollow feeling after a deep conversation where you help someone untangle their pain, only to realize you've said almost nothing about your own. It's lying awake at night, mind turning over every interaction, every unspoken need, every moment you held back, while wondering if anyone ever lies awake thinking of you in the same way. This isn't self-pity. It's the hidden grief of the one who gives the most empathy and receives the least in return. If these words are landing somewhere tender inside you, if you recognize the quiet exhaustion of always being the strong one, the perceptive one, the one who holds it together, then know you're not alone in feeling alone. This space is for those who feel deeply, see clearly, and often carry their truths in silence. Stay here with me. If this resonates, consider subscribing, because these conversations are built for hearts like yours. And if you feel ready, share something small in the comments. Just a fragment of your experience. Sometimes naming the weight is the first step towards setting it down. Let's pause the ache for a moment, not to dismiss it, but to illuminate it. Because the loneliness you carry isn't a flaw in your character. It isn't weakness. It isn't even, at its root, about being too sensitive. It's the direct consequence of a mind and nervous system wired for profound empathy in a world that rarely reciprocates at the same depth. We call this wiring emotional intelligence. But the term has been softened, commodified, turned into corporate buzzwords about reading the room, or managing teams. The deeper truth is far more raw. Emotional intelligence, as Daniel Goleman first framed it, is not just skill. It's a heightened perceptual capacity. It's the ability to perceive, understand, and manage emotions in yourself and others with uncanny precision. Yet for those who score highest on the empathy dimension, the interpersonal radar that detects micro-expressions, tonal shifts, unspoken grief, the gift is double-edged. You don't just notice emotions, you inhabit them. Mirror neurons in your brain fire so intensely that another person's pain can register in your body as if it were your own. You feel the tightness in their chest, the tremor in their voice, the way fear pools behind their eyes. And because you feel it so viscerally, you respond. You soothe, you translate, you hold. But this capacity didn't emerge in a vacuum. It was forged, often in childhood, under conditions of emotional unpredictability. Consider attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. In secure environments, children learn that their emotions are met with consistent attunement. Caregivers mirror, name, and regulate feelings, teaching the child that vulnerability leads to connection. But in homes marked by neglect, chaos, or emotional volatility, the script flips. The child learns that adult emotions are unstable landmines. To survive, to maintain proximity to the very caregivers they depend on, the child becomes hyper-attuned. They scan faces for danger signals. They anticipate needs before they're voiced. They become the emotional regulator of the household, often at the expense of their own needs being seen or met. This is the origin story of the parentified child, the one who grows into the adult who understands everyone else first. Your nervous system remembers this survival strategy. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory describes how the vagus nerve governs our social engagement system, the neurobiological foundation of safety and connection. In safe environments, the ventral vagal pathway dominates, calm, open, reciprocal. But in threat-rich childhoods, the system recalibrates toward hypervigilance. The sympathetic branch mobilizes, scanning, analyzing, preparing. Over time, this becomes default. You enter every interaction with your social engagement system on high alert, reading subtle cues of threat or disconnection in others. You co-regulate them effortlessly. Your calm presence down regulates their anxiety. But because your own system was rarely co-regulated in childhood, you lack the embodied experience of being safely held in your dysregulation. You can ventrally vagal for others, but struggle to access it for yourself without exhaustive effort. This shapes your adult identity at the deepest level. You become the one others turn to in crisis, the confidant, the mediator, the wisdom keeper. Your empathy is not performative. It is instinctive, neurological, survival honed. Yet the very adaptation that once kept you relationally safe now enforces emotional distance. Because you learned that your own emotions were inconvenient, overwhelming, or unsafe to express, you internalize the role of container rather than the one contained. You give understanding freely, but receiving it feels foreign, almost suspect. When someone tries to hold space for you, part of you braces, waiting for the moment they'll withdraw, minimize, or fail to grasp the depth. And often, they do. Not out of malice, but because most people's empathy operates at a shallower bandwidth. This is where the hidden pain sharpens. You are surrounded by people who benefit from your depth, yet few possess the reciprocal capacity to meet you there. Your inner world, rich, turbulent, layered, remains untranslated, and the exhaustion of constant one-way empathy accumulates like sediment, weighing down the heart. These are not theories pulled from thin air. They are documented patterns in developmental psychology, neuroscience, and clinical observation. Highly empathic individuals often trace their acuity to early environments where emotional attunement was inconsistent or absent. The brain adapts by amplifying interpersonal sensitivity. Mirror neuron systems become overactive. The anterior insula lights up more intensely in response to others' emotions. The default mode network spins complex narratives of others' inner states. It's survival brilliance. But survival adaptations rarely consider long-term relational reciprocity. You didn't choose this wiring. It chose you in response to what was needed to stay connected when connection felt precarious. And now, it defines how you move through the world, seeing clearly, feeling deeply, giving generously, and waiting, often in vain, for someone to see you with the same unflinching clarity. The loneliness you carry isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with dramatic breakdowns or desperate pleas. It's quieter, more corrosive, a slow erosion of the spirit that happens in the spaces between connections. It's the grief you feel after giving someone your full presence, your careful words, your unspoken reassurance, only to realize that the exchange was never truly mutual. You leave lighter for having unburdened them, but heavier for having absorbed what they couldn't hold. This is the emotional sacrifice at the heart of your wiring. You trade your own visibility for their comfort. You sacrifice the right to be messy, while others vent freely, spilling anger, fear, confusion without filter. You curate your expressions with surgical precision. You weigh every word, anticipating how it might land, how it might overwhelm or disappoint. You soften your pain into something palatable, or you swallow it entirely. Because you know, from lifetimes of observation, that most people recoil from depth that demands too much of them. They want relief, not resonance. They want solutions, not shared suffering. So you become the alchemist, transmuting your chaos into their clarity, at the cost of your own unprocessed shadows accumulating in the dark. You sacrifice spontaneous joy, too. In groups, you're the one scanning for fractures. The friend who's quieter than usual, the subtle exclusion, the brewing conflict. Your empathy pulls you toward repair before celebration. While others lose themselves in laughter, you're half present, holding the emotional perimeter. The result? You experience connection vicariously through others' ease, but rarely inhabit it fully yourself. Your highs are muted, filtered through the lens of collective harmony you feel responsible for maintaining. At the root of these sacrifices lie core fears, ancient and visceral. The fear that if you truly revealed the full spectrum of your inner world, the intensity, the contradictions, the endless nuance, you would become too much, too heavy, too incomprehensible. You fear that your depth would burden others, the way theirs sometimes burdens you, but without the reciprocal capacity to hold it. Deeper still, the fear that even if someone tried, they couldn't reach you, that the bridge you extend so effortlessly toward others cannot be built back toward you, not because they're unkind, but because true understanding requires a matching bandwidth, and few possess it. This fear touches something existential. It brushes against the fundamental isolation of being human. Søren Kierkegaard, the 19th century philosopher who plumbed the depths of despair and faith, wrote that the crowd is untruth. He saw profound loneliness as the inevitable companion of authentic existence. The more deeply one seeks truth, about oneself, about others, about the divine, the further one stands from the comfortable illusions of the masses. Kierkegaard's single individual is the one who dares to relate absolutely to the absolute, truth, God, meaning, and relatively to the relative, other people. But this night of faith, this leap into depth, is misunderstood by the crowd. Outwardly ordinary, inwardly ablaze with passion and anguish, they walk alone. No one sees the tremor of their soul. Your emotional intelligence places you in this lineage, not of religious faith perhaps, but of existential authenticity. You see through superficialities. You feel the weight of unspoken truths. You refuse the easy consolations that sustain most relationships. And in refusing, you inherit Kierkegaard's despair, the anguish of being profoundly related to others, yet separated by an unbridgeable gulf. The deeper your understanding, the sharper your awareness of this gulf. Most people live on the surface, skimming shared illusions. You dive. And in diving, you confront the existential truth that no one can fully accompany you into the depths. This is the invisible grief, mourning not just specific relationships, but the very possibility of perfect reciprocity. It's grieving the child who learned to understand others to feel safe, never imagining the adult price. It's grieving the connections that feel close but stop at the threshold of your true complexity. It's a grief without clear object, no death, no betrayal, just the quiet accumulation of moments where you were the giver, the holder, the translator, and no one stepped forward to do the same for you. This grief is sacred in its own way. It signals that you have not numbed yourself to the human condition. You feel the isolation not because you're broken, but because you're awake. Awake to the beauty and terror of consciousness. Awake to the miracle of partial connection in a universe of separate minds. But awakening comes with weight, and carrying that weight alone year after year carves hollows in the heart that no amount of surface-level belonging can fill. By now, the paradox has settled into your bones. The childhood adaptation, becoming the one who understands to stay safe, has woven itself into the fabric of your adult life. It shows up not as dramatic flaws, but as quiet, persistent patterns that feel like just who you are. But they aren't your essence. They are coping strategies, brilliant in their origin, now outdated armor that keeps the very connection you crave at arm's length. In relationships, you attract people who need holding. Partners, friends, even fleeting connections gravitate toward your steady presence, your ability to name their unspoken fears, to make them feel profoundly seen. You become their safe harbor. And in the beginning, this feels like intimacy. You give, they receive, and for a moment, the reciprocity seems possible. But over time, the imbalance reveals itself. You listen for hours, they listen for minutes. You anticipate their needs, they rarely ask about yours. You excuse it. They're going through a lot. I'm better at this anyway. But beneath the justification lies the old survival script. If I understand them deeply enough, they'll stay. If I hold their pain, they won't abandon me. Yet the relational consequence is inevitable. You end up in dynamics where your depth is valued, but your vulnerability is not. Another manifestation, you pull away before they can. Sensing the gulf widening, you withdraw into self-sufficiency, convinced it's better to leave first than to risk the slow starvation of one-sided understanding. In your career, the pattern echoes. You excel in roles that demand emotional labor counseling, teaching, leadership, creative fields where insight is currency. Colleagues seek your advice, clients open up to you, teams stabilize under your quiet influence. You read group dynamics like a book, diffusing conflicts before they erupt, mentoring others through their blocks. But promotion often eludes you, or when it comes, it exhausts you. Why? Because you overextend, absorbing the emotional fallout of workplace stress while your own ambitions stay unspoken. You downplay your needs in meetings, sensing others' insecurities and making space for them instead. The coping strategy here is subtle. By being the indispensable emotional glue, you secure belonging in a system that might otherwise overlook you. Yet the cost is burnout, disguised as dedication, recognition that feels hollow because no one truly sees the toll it takes on you. With boundaries, the manifestations are particularly insidious. You struggle to say no, not out of people-pleasing alone, but because you feel others' disappointment viscerally, as if it were your own. Requests pull at you like gravitational forces. You sense the unspoken. If you don't, I'll be hurt, and comply to restore equilibrium. Your yeses are automatic, your boundaries porous. On the flip side, when you do enforce a limit, it's often after resentment has built, erupting in withdrawal or sharpness that surprises even you. These aren't character defects. They're protective echoes. In childhood, firm boundaries risked rejection or chaos, so you learned fluid ones, attuned to others' edges more than your own. Now, as an adult, honoring your limits feels like threatening the fragile connection you've worked so hard to maintain. Your inner dialogue carries the heaviest manifestations. It's a relentless narrator, analyzing every interaction through others' eyes. Did I overwhelm them? Should I have held back? They seemed fine. Why am I still thinking about this? You replay conversations, refining what you said, imagining better translations of their pain. Self-doubt creeps in disguised as empathy. Maybe you're too intense, too needy for depth that doesn't exist. Exhaustion becomes your baseline, yet you question if you're just overthinking. This internal committee isn't innate sensitivity run amok. It's the hypervigilant scanner still monitoring for relational safety, turning inward when outward reciprocity fails. And perhaps the most pervasive, the habit of emotional isolation. You crave connection but retreat into solitude, convincing yourself it's preference when it's really safeguard. Books, journals, long walks, these become your truest companions because they demand nothing back. Here, at least, you've fully understood without the risk of mistranslation. These 6 patterns: imbalanced relationships, overextension in career, porous or reactive boundaries, hyper-analytic inner dialogue, resentment masked as understanding, and chosen isolation, are not who you are. They are strategies, masterful ones. They once ensured that unpredictable emotions didn't shatter your world. They made you the one who could hold chaos without breaking. But recognizing them as strategies, not identity, opens the door to unlearning. This begins with witnessing, pure, compassionate observation, without the old reflex to gaslight yourself. When you catch the pattern mid-stride, I'm absorbing their stress again. Pause. Don't rush to, I shouldn't feel this, or I'm too much. Simply name it. This is the old protector speaking. This is the child who learned understanding equals safety. Hold the observation gently, like cupping a flame in cold wind. No judgment, no minimization, just clear seeing. This witnessing is revolutionary. It interrupts the automatic loop, creating space where new choices can emerge. It allows you to grieve the coping without disowning the gift, because your empathy remains profound, rare, beautiful. The work isn't to dismantle it, but to redirect some of that exquisite understanding back toward yourself. Healing doesn't mean dulling your empathy. It doesn't mean becoming less perceptive, less deep, less you. It means reclaiming the energy you've poured outward and allowing some of it to flow back inward. It means learning to hold yourself with the same reverence you've always extended to others. This isn't about fixing a broken part. It's about integrating the protector and the protected, the observer and the felt. Begin with the inner child, the small version of you who first learned that understanding others was the price of belonging. Speak to them directly in quiet moments, not with grand rituals, but with simple presence. Sit in stillness and ask, what did you need then that you didn't receive? What are you still carrying for the adults who couldn't carry themselves? Let the answers come without judgment, tears, memories, tightness in the chest. When they surface, don't rush to translate or soothe them away. Instead, offer the co-regulation you once craved, a hand on your heart, slow breaths, the words, I see you. You're safe now. I'm here. This reparenting isn't abstract psychology. It's rewiring the nervous system, teaching the vagus nerve that vulnerability no longer equals danger. Over time, the hypervigilance softens. You begin to feel your own emotions without immediately scanning for how they affect others. Shadow work follows naturally. The shadows here are the parts you've disowned to remain the good. 1. The anger at being unseen, the resentment at one-sided dynamics, the envy of those who express freely without consequence. These aren't flaws, they're exiled protectors. To integrate them, name them honestly. Journal the unfiltered truths. I'm furious that I always listen and no one asks me how I am. I wish I could be messy without losing love. Feel the heat of these admissions in your body. Then, compassionately inquire, what were you protecting me from? The answer often circles back to abandonment, chaos, rejection. By witnessing these shadows without banishing them, you reclaim power. The anger becomes healthy boundaries. The resentment becomes discernment in relationships. The envy becomes permission to take up space. Cultivate deliberate softness not as weakness, but as choice. Practice receiving before giving. In conversations, pause before offering insight. Ask yourself, am I being asked, or am I defaulting to rescue? Allow silence to linger. Share one small truth about your inner state and observe what happens without preemptively softening it. Seek relationships where depth is mirrored, therapy rooms, support circles, friendships with fellow deep feelers. These spaces retrain the nervous system to expect reciprocity, and when it's absent, practice grieving in real time, naming the loss instead of absorbing it. Somatic practices anchor this integration. Your body holds the old adaptations in tightened shoulders, shallow breath, chronic fatigue, gentle movement. Yoga, walking in nature, dance without audience, releases the stored vigilance. Breathwork invites ventral vagal tone, long exhales, signaling safety to the ancient brain. Over months, you notice shifts. Social interactions drain less. Solitude feels chosen rather than defensive. Vulnerability begins to feel like strength because you've learned to self-regulate afterward. Carl Jung, who mapped the psyche's depths with unflinching honesty, wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Your path isn't toward shallower waters, but toward conscious depth, where empathy flows both ways, where you give without depletion because you've learned to receive from yourself first. This integration won't erase loneliness entirely. Profound awareness always carries some solitude, but it transforms the quality of it from aching isolation to sacred aloneness, the kind that makes true connection possible when it arrives. You begin to attract those capable of meeting you, not perfectly, but earnestly, and in the meantime, you become your own mirror, your own safe harbor. You are not too much. You are not doomed to carry this alone. The empathy that once isolated you becomes the bridge to deeper belonging, starting with the belonging you cultivate within. If you've journeyed this far with me, thank you for trusting these words with your tender places. This channel is a quiet refuge for hearts that feel everything: the exhaustion, the beauty, the unspoken grief, and the quiet hope. If today's script touched something raw or true in you, leave a comment with whatever feels safe to share. A line, a memory, a simple, "This is me." You'll find others here who understand without explanation. And if this space feels like somewhere you want to return, subscribe, turn on notifications, like if it helped carry the weight even slightly. We're not here to numb the depth. We're here to honor it together. You are not here to be fixed. You are here to become whole.